All right, good day, everyone. Welcome to another show. And this time is going to be part 6 of our dive into the Gospel of Thomas, where we're going through each verse within this beautiful, beautiful compilation of words together, and just seeing what comes up, seeing what we see. And yeah, it's been very powerful to go through this so far. This is part 6. So if you do want to start at the beginning, I'd suggest watching the playlist in the description of the post. But yeah, it's an amazing text, and it's very clear why this text was excluded from the canonical Bible, because it's just far too powerful. It's far too powerful as far as what it reveals and what it encourages, which is us to step into that Christic nature, which is not bestowed by any external entity. So no religion, no government, nothing can bestow that upon you, because you are that. We just simply forget sometimes. So I'm excited to dive back into this one. And apologies on part 5. We did have some connection issues. So we are going to be reviewing some of the verses that we covered last time, just so it's clear on the recording, because this is an important text, and I want to make sure it comes through clearly. So that said, if for this show or for any show, if you ever do hear issues with the connection, please let us know, so that we can either adjust or make changes as need be. So feedback is always helpful. And yeah, I'm very grateful to be joined, not on screen this time, but just so grateful for his presence, our brother Darth Phaedrus, who's just been so amazing to have alongside me in going over these texts. So thanks for being here, brother.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So with that said, let's just jump right into it. And as we've done before, I'm going to share screen so that you can read along. If you do want to look at the PDF of what we're reviewing, that is linked in the description as well. And yeah, so let's just get started. So pulling up the document here. So where we kind of left off, or we went further last time, but this is verse 69 is where it started to get kind of hairy as far as the recording. So I wanted to go back through that, and we'll just quickly review the ones we have gone over already. So verse 69, Yeshua said, "Blessed are those who have been persecuted in their hearts, for they have known the Father in truth. Blessed are those who are hungry, for they will be fulfilled." So this is sort of illustrating that. Darth said beautifully last time that it's like cognitive dissonance, or that internal struggle of coming to terms with the truth. So blessed are those who have been persecuted in their hearts, for they have known the Father in truth. So when we go through that struggle of wrestling with our own ego, and that sort of desire to stay in the comfort of even if it's a lie, the ego always wants to stay the same. So when we confront it with change, especially when that change is monumental, like remembering that you are the Christ, which is pretty massive compared to what society teaches us, then you're gonna feel that persecution within your own heart. You're gonna feel that internal struggle. So it's just saying, it's marking that, and it's also saying, blessed are those who are hungry, for they will be fulfilled. So we have to have this yearning, this hunger for the truth, for realization of who we truly are. If we want to just maintain the status quo and just eat whatever we've been fed by society, then we can have that. But we have to be, in order to shift into something different, into something more powerful, and to stepping into who we truly are, we have to be hungry for that. So yeah, that's go ahead, bro.
Yeah, a lot of the traditional scriptures, they obscure the part where it says blessed are those who have been persecuted, and then they kind of end the thought process there. They take off the part where it says in their hearts. And why is that important? Well, where's your heart located? It's inside you. So blessed are those that have gone through a persecution within themselves. And who's persecuting them? Well, you're persecuting yourself. You're putting yourself through the discomfort of noticing that we don't live in a material world, but rather that there is a hidden aspect to reality, and that the truth of who we are and where we are, it doesn't spring from the material world, but it springs from the hidden aspect of it. And so when we put ourselves to the persecution of realizing this world is not quite what it seems to be, then we can look for the Father who is hidden from the physical senses. And once we have that hunger, now we can be filled. But if we never recognize that we're in a position of lack, and if we don't ever have that hunger and drive, then you'll never do what it takes to find truth and to find the Father who's hidden from the physical senses.
Yeah, well said. Thanks for that. And just a bit of feedback on your mic. You might want to just, if you can, move it a hair away from your mouth. It's just a little harsh. I turned it down a bit, but I think it'll make it more smooth if you just move the mic just a little bit away from you. So moving on to verse 70. Oh, did you want to test that? Test your mic real quick.
Yeah, let me see here. I can turn it down a little bit. How's that?
Yeah, that sounds better.
Okay, good.
Yeah, great. So verse 70 is saying, Yeshua said, when you bring forth that within you, then that will save you. If you do not, then that will kill you. So this is that is the insatiable creative essence of this experience and consciousness itself. So when you bring forth that within you, the true essence of consciousness, then that will save you. That's the path of life. If we are aligned with creation's sort of continuous underlying desire for expansion and creation, if we're aligned with that, if we're moving with that, if we're flowing with that river, then that will save you. But if we fight against the current, if we dig in our heels and say, no, I don't want to expand, I don't want to learn, I don't want to grow, then that same essence will kill you. So it's like there's no getting around this, because this is ultimately the primary reason why this was set up in the first place, why we decided to create an experience like this. So if we're not aligning with our truest and highest desires, then creation ceases to have a use for us, and we simply stop having a use for ourselves as well, because that's not really truly aligned with self when we become lazy or just just unwilling to move with creation. So that's what I see here.
Yeshua puts a lot of importance on this idea of having your life built on that divine truth that comes from within, and that comes from the hidden aspect of reality, because it's the only source of life. You can't get life from any other source other than from the absolute divine. And so for those that do not put forth the effort to establish a personal connection with the divine, well, the end result is death. And it's just a sort of inescapable thing. And then you have to repeat your life over and over again until you learn the lesson of establishing a sufficient personal relationship with that absolute divine that exists within the hidden aspect of reality.
Yeah, well said. So verse 71 says, Yeshua said, I will overturn this house and none will be able to rebuild it. So again, this flies in the face of the sort of church's portrayal of Jesus as this soft sort of, passive essence, but he was and is a warrior. He represents that warrior essence. And when we have, especially when we live in his days and these days where it's been dominated by this self-serving parasitic monster, basically, this house is so corrupt at its core. And when the truth comes along, when that Christic essence comes along, you will overturn this house and none will be able to rebuild it. We're not going back to this kind of layer. The Christic way is the way. And so that's what he's saying here. Yeah. Did you have anything else on that one, Darth?
The teachings of Christ would overturn the organized religious institutions of that time. And we've and he does say none will be able to rebuild it. And for a while, we've been living in a time in which organized religion and organized institutions outside the family unit have kind of made a bit of a comeback. However, it will not last, and it cannot last, because the truth that the Christ spoke is you can't destroy. It will always come back, and it's destined for the teachings of Christ to continually come back and get in the way of tyranny and overcome tyranny. It's why they're always opposing Christianity everywhere that you find it. But the words of Christ, that they exert force in every world and in every timeline, and it inevitably always overturns these institutions. He's really an unstoppable force, and all it really takes is for one person to go within and make contact with the Christ within and acquire that truth. And so the darkness has to eliminate every single aspect. Every lit person they have to eliminate, because it only takes one to restore this world back to a Christic standpoint. That's really the confidence that Yeshua had in his words. He says that he was going to overturn the house and that no one would be able to rebuild it. He had absolute confidence in the power of the internal connection with the divine.
Yep, exactly. So verse 72 says, a man said to him, speak to my brothers that they may share with me my father's property. Yeshua answered him, who made me into a divider? Turning to his disciples, he said, who am I to divide? Yeah, Darth, will you take this one? I don't remember exactly what we said last time, but I'll let you take this one.
Sure. So the man is a religious leader, and he's saying, speak to my brothers. The brothers would be other religious leaders. And he's saying to make them share with me my father's property. So my father's property is the truth about the spiritual realm and the power that comes from that. And so basically he's saying, tell these other religious leaders to let me start my own little congregation, to let me start my own little religion. And Yeshua says, who made me a divider? And what he's talking about is a divider of truth. The truth is supposed to be one thing, not two separate things. So we're not supposed to say, oh, that one religion over there, that's true, but this one over here is false. No, truth is one separate thing, and it's not to be divided. And the second you do divide it, it's no longer true. And so that's one of the things that you find among the ancient Essenes and the ancient Cathars, is that even though you had all these individual groups and they all had their individual perspective of truth, and they had their individual perspective of the Christ and the Christ energy, but one person's perspective didn't cancel out another. So the Cathars in the northern region didn't say we have the truth, and the Cathars in the southern region, they don't, and they would never fight over it, right? However, in modern Western civilization, we have these battles that sometimes become physical in nature. Oh, the Baptists have the truth, but the Catholics don't. Or, oh, the Mormons have the truth, but, these people don't. Well, no. The Christ is the source of truth, and there's only one Christ. And the Christ is easily accessible to everyone within, and the truth is not to be divided. And we're not to say that one person has more truth than the other, but everyone has a unique individual perspective of the truth, but it's the same truth. There's just one God, just one Christ, and that's it, even though we all see him from our individual perspective. We're not to be forming congregations and forming individual religions and then saying that ours is right and the others are wrong.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the Christic essence is ultimately a unifying force, whereas the anti-Christic is always going to be using the divide and conquer, continuously separating everything. Now, not to be confused, because there are times when there is because in the book of Matthew, Christ talks about how I didn't come here to unite you, but I came to divide you. So there are times when establishments are built up around lies, and he talks about having father against son and brother against sister and all that. Because when in this time of revelation, when we were seeing the lie completely, then those who align with it must be divided from those who are aligning with the truth. So not to be confused there, but ultimately the Christic energy is a unifying force. It's bringing back to that singular knowing that there ultimately is no division. So to act as such is out of alignment with creation. So yeah, thanks for that. And then moving on to verse 73, Yeshua said, "The harvest is abundant, but the workers are few. Pray the master to send more workers to the harvest." So this one's pretty simple. Just sort of, hoping that there are more Christic beings, or those even just budding in that space, to help, because the harvest is at hand and we need more workers. So the same as what Q is doing in this time to encourage more workers, more of those who are aligned with the truth to step in and help. So pretty simple stuff there. But yeah, Darth, did you have anything else on that one?
Nope.
All right. So verse 74, the master said, "There are many who stand round on the well, but no one to go down into it." So same thing, people stand by and watch things happen, but the Christic energy is going to inspire action. It's not just to stand by ogling at something. It's you got to get in and get to it. So just again saying there are many around, but not many willing to actually get down and get dirty and get into it.
There's another parallel translation that says, "Lord, there are many around the well, but there's nothing in it to drink." Or there's many around the drinking trough, but there's nothing in the cistern. And so this is a reference that there's many that are reading the Bible, but their cup is empty. So they're taking the words literally, and they're not perceiving the hidden meaning to the scriptures. And that this is a kind of a continuation of the verse before, where he says there's a lot of work to be done, but we need more workers to understand the hidden meaning in the scriptures and the hidden meaning of the world around us, to bring this into the awareness of the people.
Yeah, and just on that translation, but nothing in the cistern to drink. I mean, that would be a reference to like our human physiology as well, and the chrism oil being that essence to drink, the libations. So there are many who stand around. There are many who have bodies and this ability to tap into this beautiful regenerative self and the systems within our body to do that. But you have to step fully into the Christic way in order to drink. So another reference there. So thanks for that. And then verse 75, Yeshua said, "Many are standing by the door, but only those who are alone and simple can enter the bridal chamber. So this is another one that's pointing towards the human physiology, in the sense that there is a straight and narrow way, and it aligns with that passageway. I forget the name of it, but that connects the pineal to the chamber of the bridegroom, and that pathway actually illuminates it. There's a physical light that lights up when we walk this straight and narrow path down that straight and narrow sort of communication line between these two segments of the brain. So, and the only way that we can do that is if we are alone, all one, alone, as in solitary, still, silent, and simple, within ourselves. So the monacos, the monk way, and that's the only way that we can enter the innermost part of ourselves, which is the connection point to the divine. And that's where we shine brightly. That's where we have, if we have oil in our lamp, it illuminates. And so it's referring to that. It's also similar to the other parable of better or easier for what is it that I'm drawing a blank on, like the eye of the needle, better for do you remember that passage? And would you say that this is similar to that one?
I think that there's I think you're referring to the parable where Jesus says that it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of the needle. And the eye of the needle was referenced to a gate in the wall of Jerusalem that was not meant for camels. It was only meant for pedestrian foot traffic. And Jesus was saying it was easier for a camel to pass through that little gate, that little door, than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom. And that's kind of a similar idea to what verse 75 is speaking about, because there's a lot of people that are trying to pass into the kingdom, but it's only those that are alone and simple. So what does it mean, someone who's alone and simple? Well, someone who's alone, they're not part of a larger tradition. So you might associate with the tradition, you might go to a specific church, but the church and the tradition, you understand that that's not actually the truth. That's not actually God. That's just a tool to use, and you understand that it's the relationship with God in your heart. That's the actual door to heaven, not the door of the church. And so it's people that are like that they're the ones that could enter into the bridal chamber. Whereas a wealthy man, he thinks that heaven is the pleasurable conditions here on earth that's brought about by his money. And the wealthy man, he relies on his physical senses because he's never had to rely on any kind of spiritual force because he's wealthy. So he hasn't been through any sort of personal tribulation because he hasn't needed to. But those that are alone and those that are simple, they're the ones that can pass into the bridal chamber and actually get into heaven, because a lot of times out of necessity, because they haven't had the physical resources to survive on, so they've been forced to survive on spiritual resources. So that's sort of what the scripture is saying here. And it's kind of a paradoxical thing and kind of frustrating. I think that we can kind of speak all day on these principles, but if someone hasn't acquired the spiritual ear and the eyes to see, we're kind of just pounding on that door. And really they have to be, they have to be selected almost by the Spirit and selected by Yeshua. And then they're given eyes to see, and then they're given ears to hear. And then they can enter in, but it's a singular process. People enter into heaven one at a time on the personal level.
Yeah, exactly. All right. And then verse 76, the kingdom of the Father is like the merchant who had a load of goods to sell. Then he saw a pearl. The merchant was wise and sold his goods to buy the pearl. You too should pursue the treasure which is everlasting, that where moths never go nor worms devour. So when we realize that this physical reality is it's not where we need to be looking as far as like accumulation of wealth or any of that, like all of that. The pearl in this allegory represents this inner knowing that once I have tasted the blessings of God, the divine influence, felt that presence, then nothing else in the external is worthwhile. I mean, it doesn't mean that we can't have things in the external, but it's not our anchor. It's not where we're pointing our compass any longer. So when we see that pearl, then nothing else is worth more than that. So we sell all our goods if need be, and that can be physical or just shifting our life to where our orientation is towards this pearl and ensuring that is the center of where we move. So that's why he says, you too should pursue that treasure which is everlasting, there where moths never go nor worms devour, because it's not a physical place. It's not a physical thing to acquire, but it is the most magical, most worthwhile thing to pursue. So yeah, it's a beautiful verse.
So the merchant, he had a lot of goods to sell, and so he's a merchant. So he's trading time for knowledge, and he has access. He says he has a lot of goods to sell. So what's that? What does that mean? That means that he has access to a lot of the sacred scriptures. Okay, and so he's conducting his business, trading his time for the opportunity to read the sacred scriptures. And when he comes upon a pearl, and what is the pearl? The pearl is suddenly understanding what it is that Christ is saying. All of a sudden he gets it and he comes alive. And so what does he do? He lets go of the literal translation and the literal knowledge of the scriptures. And he purchases the hidden meaning, the occult meaning that Yeshua is constantly speaking about. And now he's let go of one and he has the other. And why does Yeshua say, you too should pursue that treasure which is everlasting, where moths never go and worms never devour? Because religions come and go. Entire cultures come and go. There might be a time in which modern Christianity comes to an end, and enough time goes by, we might not even know the name Yeshua anymore, or the idea of Christ. That could all pass away, eaten by the sands of the never-ending infinite, right? And yet the spirit of the Christ, even if we know it by another name, that will continue. And the consciousness that we have, even if it's associated with a different persona, that continues. And so we should understand that one of these things is more important. So our physical churches and our physical traditions and the physical books, that's all talking about something, but it's not actually the thing that it's talking about, right? Like the word dog is not actually a dog, right? It's a pointer toward this actual thing. And so all of these scriptures that we have are pointing toward the actual Christ who's hidden. We don't ever actually, see the Christ with our physical eyes. It's a spiritual thing that then we have a relationship with. And so he's saying, pursue the treasure that's everlasting, where moths never go, worms never devour. And so the worms would also be like apostates that crept into the Christian family and perverted it and turned it from a spiritual meaning to a literal physical meaning. So one of these things is more important than the other.
Yeah, well said. So verse 77 says, Yeshua said, I am the light that shines on everyone. I am the all. The all came forth from me, and the all came into me. Split the wood, and I am there. Turn over the stone, and there you will find me. And me being that Christic essence, which is in all of you and everyone. So he is representing that divine light, which is what we all are. We are light manifest in physical form. So we began as light, and we've came up with ways to slow down our vibrations to give the appearance of physicality. And we decided to split ourselves into infinite number of characters and forms and personalities, and all to have this experience of knowing thyself in greater ways through contrasting elements of appearing to separate, so that we could coalesce and come back together and share and compare notes and learn all along the way. So he says, I am the light that shines on everyone. I am the all. The all came forth from me, and the all came into me. Split the wood, and I am there. Turn over the stone, and there you will find me. So you can change all of those eyes to use, or to me. You can read this from your perspective, and it's very true. You know, we're just in varying levels of realization, but that's what the Christic path is to realize that you are that. And so that's what he's shining as this example. So a beautiful verse for verse 77, Christ 77.
Yeah, that's really well said. There isn't anything else other than the Christ. And even the things that are not very Christ-like still have a little bit of Christ in them to some point. Otherwise, they couldn't exist or manifest into our world. And that means that everything is subject to the Christ, both the wood and the stone. So both the Old Testament and the New Testament, both heaven and earth, and everything in between. There isn't anywhere that we can go that we're not going to find the essence of the Christ, both within and without. And so having a relationship with the actual real Christ within versus just some fictional understanding is, one of these things is more important than the other, and they're not exactly the same, but one's pointing.
Yep, exactly. So verse 78, Yeshua said, why do you roam the countryside to see some reeds shaken by the wind, to see people like your kings and courtiers in elegant clothes? They wear fine clothes, but they cannot know the truth. So why do we look in the external? Why do we look? Why are we concerned with the elegant clothes, the external appearance? Those who worry about their persona, their identity, they can wear fine clothes and that they can garb themselves physically, but it doesn't mean anything as far as what the truth is. If they're not living that way, then it's simply just you can paint a piece of shit all sorts of fine colors, but if it doesn't transmute itself, or it still is that same at the core. So it's all about that internal transmutational process and realizing who we truly are, not just focusing on the external. So that's what I see out of this one.
I like that he says that to see people like your kings and courtiers in elegant clothes. And what he's bringing out here is that they're in collusion to prop up the illusion of religion, because you need leaders, but you also need followers. And so you have one person pretending to be a king, and then you have another person pretending to be a follower, and then they dress themselves with ego. That's what the elegant clothing is. And then what happens is that you have someone who's an actual child of Christ, but perhaps they're not educated enough to know that they have a relationship with Christ within. And so they see someone that appears to be a king, and then they see someone who appears to be a courtier, and they have this splash of ego. And so then they go and they follow it, and they're following the appearance of it. But in reality, these people that lift themselves up as religious leaders and the empty people that follow them, they don't know the truth, and they could never know the truth. because it's within and it doesn't come from external appearance.
Yep. All right. Verse 79, a woman in the crowd said to him, "Blessed are the womb that bore you and the breasts that nursed you." He answered, "Blessed are those who listen to the word of the Father and truly follow it. For the day will come when you will say, 'Blessed are the womb that has never borne and the breasts that have never nursed.'" I'm going to let you take this one. I can't quite remember what we said.
So the womb refers to the Old Testament, and the breast refers to the New Testament. So someone in the crowd is saying, "Blessed are the Scriptures," and he's saying that actually, blessed are those who listen to the word of the Father. So the Father is hidden, and his speech is also hidden, and that's something that only one spirit can hear another spirit. Physical creatures, they don't hear the spirit; they're blind to that. So blessed are those that listen in spirit, and they can see the hidden knowledge of the Father and hear and see the hidden direction of the Father. So you have you can have you can have a physical man, and he might have a copy of the Scriptures, but he doesn't see the spiritual meaning to it. And then you have a spiritual man that's a spiritual relationship on the inside with Christ, and they both go along the same road. And someone that actually hears the Christ within, he'll obey the Christ and take action, and he'll be blessed, and he'll experience the bliss that comes from that. But there are many that have a copy of the Bible, and they don't listen to the Father. They don't listen to the Spirit. And so what's going to happen is that is he says, "For the day will come when you will say," so that's 2 days, or that's 1,000 years, when you're going to say, "Blessed are the womb that has never borne and the breasts that have never nursed." So that means hold on, let me look at my notes here. 79. There will be days when there will be okay, so there's what it's saying. Blessed are those who listen to the word of Father and truly follow it. That's understandable. And then the day is going to come when you're going to say, "Blessed are the womb that has never borne and the breast who have never nursed." Oh, okay, so there's going to be a time when there's going to be people, and they don't have the Scriptures, and they don't have the religious institutions anymore, but everyone has a personal relationship with the Christ. Okay, yeah, I had to go back and read the Scriptures. See, when I was trying to go by verse or by sentence, and when I separated it, it lost its meaning. But when I went back and read it, then the meaning came back when I put it together. Because Christ does this thing where he does a contrast. He says one way, and then he inverts it and says it the other way. So he's saying that it's okay to have Scriptures, but it's better to actually follow the Father spiritually. And then there's going to be the time is going to come when there will be no Scriptures, and there will be no church, and there will be no institutions, but everyone is going to have that personal relationship themselves. So the womb will not be born, and the breast will not nurse, because there's no church and there's no Scriptures, and yet people are still blessed because they have the relationship with the Father. That's what that verse means. It was just tricky.
Yeah, and I also see how it could be referring to the Divine Mother as well, sort of bringing back she the womb that has never borne and the breasts that have never nursed. So through our relationship with the Father, we also have a relationship with the Mother, and so it's bringing us back to that instead of just focusing on the whether institutions or our physical birth mother, which, it's a beautiful thing, but to bring back that divine and importance and significance of our earthly mother and heavenly father. So I can see that too.
I almost think that it might read better. Blessed are those not of the womb and not of the breast, or blessed are those that are not from the womb and not from the breast. It might be like perhaps a slight tweaking of the translation would clarify that meaning. But it says what it says, so.
Yeah, possibly so. All right, well, moving on to verse 80. Yeshua said, "Whoever knows the world discovers the body, but the world is unworthy, and but the world is unworthy of whoever discovers the body." So, when you know the world is the false construct of man. So whoever knows the world discovers the body, discovers its essentially the path of the world is to death. So and so when we discover that, but the world is unworthy of whoever discovers the body, when we realize that the path of the world is death, then we are stepping into the Christic path, and we are, as he says, we are in the world, but not of the world. So we are stepping away from the world just through that alignment. So that's what I see here.
Agreed. The world is dead. It's a corpse, and it's made up of a bunch of corporations. So people that don't actually know the world, and they don't understand how the system is set up, they think it's legitimate. They think the presidents are really presidents. They think the judges are really judges. They think the police officers are actually police officers. And they believe the vision of what the world is, or the illusion of what the world is projecting. And they believe the actors. They don't understand that everyone's just pretending. And so they go along with it. But once you get to know the world and why it is the way that it is and how it works the way that it works, and you understand that it's just a dead body. And once you discover that dead body, now that world is no longer worthy of you for who discovered that it's dead. So to say that they're unworthy, it means that they're beneath. So once you have access to that Christ, now you're above that world, and now you're above that death. And so the Christ offers you protection from the dead world that spreads death.
Yeah, well said. So verse 81, Yeshua said, "Whoever has become rich, may he become king. Whoever has power, may he renounce it." So richness is spiritual richness. So whoever has become rich, whoever aligns with this Christic path, will become rich. So when it's not referring to physical wealth, but richness of the soul. So may he become king. May whoever steps into that Christic way, may they become the king and queen of their own domain. May they act as king and queen every step, in every way, embodying that full Christic essence. And with great power comes great responsibility. There is power that comes with that. But that's why it also says, whoever has power, may he renounce it. May there be a consistent state of humility, though the power is inevitable when following this path. May they stay in that continuously humble state where they're not doing it for pursuit of power. The power comes, but it's transmuted and used to continue to expand the Christic influence over all of creation. But it's not for simple pursuit of power alone. So that's what I see in this one.
Right. So the thing about kings is they get to speak when they want to speak, and they get to teach. And the way that they're teaching is they're instructing other people how they want things done. So someone who's not a king, when they're before someone who is, they don't get to just speak whenever they want to. They have to wait their turn, and when they're given permission to speak by the king. So someone who has acquired the higher teachings of Christ, they should become king, which means they should speak about the truth of Christ, and they should let their light shine, and they should teach, and they should instruct others how to follow the Christ. But those that have power, or the illusion of power from the church and from the political state, they should just renounce their authority, and they should just let those that are actually of Christ take the lead. And when enough of us actually have that power of Christ, and that starts to become manifest in the world, that sort of thing will happen. And it has happened before, and it'll happen again. So the Roman Empire, at one time, the Roman Empire had a great deal of political and religious power. And yet when the power of Christ became manifest in those that followed the way of the Christ, it caused the Roman Empire to collapse, and it pushed back that darkness. So this verse is it's not something unreasonable to expect that the power of Christ can take over the world again. And once again, this world can come out of the darkness, and we can bring back the Christian empire.
Absolutely. All right, verse 82 says, Yeshua said, whoever is near to me is near to the fire. Whoever is far from me is far from the kingdom. So the baptism of fire is the Christic baptism, where it burns away all impurities. We're in that forge, that refinery, being, if we're truly stepping into this, then we're surrendering to that fire, and we're saying, please cleanse me. Please clean all of these lies, this persona, the ego, identity, attachments. Let all of that burn away so that I can become pure and ready for that Christic influence, for that divine influence to flow through me. So whoever is near to the Christ is near to the fire. So, it's not always the most comfortable process to be refined in that way. It becomes more comfortable when we step into surrender more consistently, but it's hard. It's very challenging to do that. So he's letting people know that, and then just reiterating, whoever is far from me is far from the kingdom, because the Christ is always pointing towards the kingdom. It's always leading towards the kingdom. And so if we are moving away from the Christ, or far from the Christ, then we are certainly far from the kingdom.
Yeah, this verse really goes well with the one that came before it. So whoever is near to me is near to the fire of battle. That's the fire of war, because the whole point of the light is to push back the darkness. So whoever is far from the Christ is far from the kingdom. And how do you know when you're near the kingdom? Is when the banners of the kingdom are flying. And when you see the foot soldiers of the kingdom wearing the crest of the kingdom marching down the road, that's how you know you're within the territory of the kingdom. So if you have this knowledge of the higher nature of reality, or the hidden aspect of reality, and you have it, but you're not doing anything to spread wisdom into the world, then are you really near the Christ? And if you're not spreading the wisdom of the Christ, are you really part of the Christian kingdom? So Christ he doesn't just give his knowledge to people just so that they don't use it, or so that they hide it. He wants them to shine out into the world and push back the darkness, so that the women and children have a safe place to rest and to live under the umbrella of the Christ. This whole book, the whole Gospel of Thomas, is marching orders for Christians. And this is why they had to hide it, because they were able to alter the rest of the gospel so that Christians became passive, and Christians stopped fighting for what was right. And you look at the mainstream Christendom today, and they're not doing anything. They don't do battle against darkness. They don't protect the children. They don't protect the women. They're quiet and they're weak and pathetic. And that's why they had to hide this book. Because the Gospel of Thomas tells Christians to get on their feet and speak truth and speak goodness and to stand up against the darkness and to be near to the fire. So, and if you're not standing up for that, are you really a Christian? Maybe not. It's what Yeshua said.
Yeah, certainly not. And that's sort of why I've said before that if you are truly aligned with the Christic way, you will inevitably become a very polarizing figure. There are going to be those that love you who are aligned on that same path, and there are going to be those who revile you, who hate you because of what you represent. You're shining that light on all the darkness that they've allowed to fester and grow within themselves. And if they're unwilling to let go of that, they will hate you. So that's the fire. That's the battle. And, it doesn't mean to literally take up arms or go to battle in this sense, but it's every day to stand firm in the truth and not waver in that sense. And that's the continued effort that he's urging and yeah, this whole book is representing. So very well said. Thank you for that. So moving on to verse 83, Yeshua said, when images become visible to people, the light that is in them is hidden. In the icon of the light of the Father, it will be manifest, and the icon veiled by the light. Let's read that again. When images become visible to people, the light that is in them is hidden. In the icon of the light of the Father, it will be manifest, and the icon veiled by the light. So when images become visible to people, so I see this as if our continued focus is only on the external, if we're always focusing on what's happening outside the image using our physical eyes instead of our third eye, the internal recognition, then the light that is in them is hidden. So our light begins to dim when our focus is only on the external, on the images, the false construct. In the icon of the light of the Father, it will be manifest, and the icon veiled by the light. In the icon of the light of the Father, it will be manifest, and the icon veiled by the light. That's sort of a weird translation to go with. I'm going to pass it over to you, Darth, for your take.
So we go into a church, right? And in the church is the altar, and above the altar is the Christ, and we walk into a church and we see an altar, and above the altar is the cross, and on the cross is the Christ. Okay, so a literal person sees that, and they don't understand that it's a symbol. And it's a symbol for the actual Christ that resides in heaven in the hidden realm. And so when people see the images, they don't see the hidden meaning behind it. And you can only see the actual spiritual object, or you can see the physical object. You don't get to see both. You're either walking in heaven or you're walking on earth. You got to choose one. And so the people that are walking on earth and they think earth is real, and they think the physical realm is an absolute. And so because of that, they don't see the spiritual realm, because they look around with their physical eyes and they don't see it. And so they don't think it's real. However, those of us that walk with our spiritual eyes, we see this, we're walking in heaven. And we're not so concerned with what we see with our physical eyes, because the physical realm is veiled by the light. And so we see the meaning of things. And so that's the work of someone who's following the path of Christ. Our job is to get people to see the meaning of the symbols, and to see and to understand the spiritual interactions of things and the way things really are. That's our job, is to open up people's spiritual eyes so that then the icons are veiled by the light. And so you walk into a church, and once again, you see the altar and you see the cross and you see the image of Christ on the cross, but you see the energy of it. And the energy of it is more important to you than the actual physical idol.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for that. All right. And then moving on to 84. So Yeshua said, when you see your true likeness, you rejoice. But when you see your icons, those that were before you existed and that never die and never manifest, what grandeur. So when you see your true likeness, you rejoice. But when you see your icons, those that were before you existed and that never die and never manifest, what grandeur. So maybe this is sort of like stepping into our Christic realization. When we see our true likeness, you rejoice. So stepping into that. But then as we continue on this path, when we see your icons, perhaps past lives or other layers of consciousness, those that were before you existed and that never die and never manifest, what grandeur. So all layers of you that begin to, we begin to grow our relationship with as we continue to know ourselves, but we have to start with that true likeness, that true realization that we are connected to all of that. So anyway, there might be more there, but that's what I see in that one.
All right, so I'm not so sure about this translation. So the way that I was taught, so when you project your tradition onto the Bible or onto the sacred scriptures, and you project what you want to see or what you want to hear or what you expect, you see it because you think you're seeing it, and that makes you happy, okay? But when you let go of the religious tradition and you read the scriptures and you let go of the expectations and you try to see the hidden meaning and you try to reach out with your spirit to make contact with the actual Christ while you're reading it, then you see that you are the Christ. Then you see that you are what existed before your persona existed. Then you see that it's talking about your divine connection before you were even created, and that you could never die because you're not the physical substance, but you're the light, and that you could never actually be here. You could never manifest. Once you understand that, that's so much more grand than simply believing whatever the religion teaches you. So the religion teaches us that we're sinners, and the religion teaches us that we're dependent on the religion, and society teaches us that we are subject to we're dependent upon civilization and all the mechanisms. But once you understand that you're an eternal spirit and that your persona and your body is just like clothing that you're just wearing now for this life, and that you're not from the physical realm, but you spring from the eternal. That's what grandeur. That's so amazing, and it's so much bigger than anything that the religious leaders would teach. And they have to teach you that you're small so that they can control you. And they have to teach you that you're limited and that you're going to die eventually, so that you're afraid and you're forced to capitulate. So the scripture would say, like, when you see what you think you see in the Bible, then that makes a lot of people happy. But when you see the symbolism, because icons mean symbols, okay? But when you see and understand the symbolisms, that you were there before you were born, and that you never die, and that that you're something that doesn't manifest here in the world, that you don't have a physical substance, what grandeur. That's how I understand the scripture.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. All right. So verse 85, Yeshua said, Adam was produced by a great power and a great wealth, yet he was not worthy of you. If he had been worthy, he would not have known death. So, yeah, essentially saying that Adam is a part of creation and a part of us. Adam represented a sort of delineation away from true Christic integration and realization, because that's what was symbolized by walking out of the garden and experiencing death. So he's saying that when we truly embody the Christic way, then we don't know death any longer. We can step away from that. And, we can look at this from a spiritual perspective of just realizing that our soul is eternal. But higher, more advanced ways within that is literally stepping away from physical death, which is quite challenging, but it's all within the realm of what we can do if we truly step onto this path. So if he had been worthy, if Adam truly was following the Christic way, then he would not have known death. So that's what I see here.
That's exactly what it says. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. All right. So moving on to verse 86, Yeshua said, foxes have their holes and birds have their nests. The Son of Man has no place to lay his head and rest. That rhymes. So the Son of Man has no place to lay his head and rest. Maybe this is referring to the Son of Man, the Christ within, has no place to lay his head and rest, in that it's everywhere. There's no particular hidey hole or place where the Christic essence resides, but it permeates through everything. So perhaps that's what this is saying here, but I'm curious what you got to say, Darth.
So in other places of in the scriptures, it refers to Herod as a fox. So foxes would be like political leaders. They have their holes that they hide in the ground. And birds would be like religious leaders. They have their nests up high. But the Son of Man, a Christ-like person, they don't have a place to lay their head and rest, which means they don't have a position within either a political institution or a religious institution. Because if they really were a Christic person, they wouldn't need that. And this is one of the things that civilization teaches you, is that, if you want to help someone that's sick and you want to help them, well, you got to wear a white lab coat and a name tag that says doctor, or if you want to protect a weak person, you got to have a badge and a policeman's uniform, but that's not the way Christ works. He didn't have any title. He didn't have any religious institution, but he healed the people and raised the dead and made the deaf hear and performed all kinds of miracles. And he didn't have any certificates or any degrees, and he didn't hold any political office. And that was one of the objections that the religious leaders had about his apostles and his disciples, is that they were the common people. But we don't need a nest to show love to our neighbors. Though if something like that is acquired, then a truly Christ-like person would use that to help people, and would use their position to destroy their position.
Yeah, thanks for that. That makes sense. So verse 87 says, Yeshua said, wretched is the body that depends on another body. Wretched is the soul that depends on both. So wretched is the body that depends on another body. If we become dependent, I mean, even just looking at relationships as we see it today, it's all based on dependency. It's all based on even just the sexual act is just essentially masturbating with another person's body. So to have this sort of dependency on another body. He says, wretched is that. And then wretched is the soul that depends on both. So wretched is the soul that depends on the body as if the body is its identity, because it's certainly not. So, but it says wretched is the soul that depends on both. So wretched is the soul that depends on its body, and wretched is the soul that depends on another's body, because it has lost completely its realization of self and has become wretched in that sense. So that's what I see here, at least.
So there's two meanings that I am aware of for this scripture. So the first one is wretched. Wretched is the body. So that would be a worshiper that is dependent upon another body. So the first body is the worshiper, and the second body is the body of scriptures. So wretched is the person that needs a Bible to worship God and to be good. You should be good because your heart is good. Do you need a scripture that says not to rape in order for you to know not to rape? No, you should just do it. You should just be good because you are good, right? And wretched is the soul, that's someone's thinking ability, that's dependent upon the church and the scriptures. So wretched is the body, that would be a group of worshipers that depends on the scriptures. And wretched is the thinking person that depends on all of that. So that's the kind of the first meaning that I'm aware of. And then the second one, since he was talking about the verse before, he was talking about doing good without having political or religious position. And so he's saying wretched is like a judge that depends upon the officer to do good. See, the power of a judge is fictional because, first of all, there's an absolute divine law that's real, and it's eternal, and it has universal jurisdiction, and it's self-enforcing, and that's the true law, right? That's why we don't rape, murder, and steal, because of the divine law. And if we violate that, well, then the divine law itself will fall upon us. But the black-robed judge that we see in the courthouse, and he's not really even a real judge, and the law that he depends upon is not really even the divine law. So that judge, he's wretched because he doesn't have any actual power. So he writes his orders or he gives his verbal commands, and people only obey because they don't know that he's a fictional entity. And the judge is usually some old decrepit man. And what's he going to do? Throw you in prison himself? You know, he's probably incontinent. He needs a deputy to go and do the things that he wants done. He needs people to succumb to the illusion that he actually has authority when he doesn't. So wretched is anyone that depends on this fictional structure. We should be dependent upon the power of Christ that is in our hearts. And we should be dependent upon the actual real Christ and Father that is eternal. Because that authority is universal. And if that is the source of our power, then that's real power. And we're not dependent upon someone else to go and do what needs to be done, but rather the force and power of Christ does what needs to be done. So wretched is the body that depends upon another body. So wretched is anyone that's dependent upon a church or scriptures, and wretched is anyone that thinks that that's real. But if you're dependent upon the Christ, then that's really an exalted position.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Thank you for that. All right, and then verse 88, Yeshua said, angels and prophets will come to you and give you what is yours, and you too should give what you have, and ask yourselves, when will the time come for them to take what is theirs? So let's read that again. Angels and prophets will come to you and give you what is yours, and you too should give what you have, and ask yourselves, when will the time come for them to take what is theirs? So perhaps it's saying if we are stepping in to this Christic way, then we become angels and prophets. So angels and prophets will come to you and give you what is yours, as in the creation's abundance, dharmic law will give you what is yours when we follow this. And you too should give what you have, because you are now a representative of the Christic way. And ask yourselves, when will the time come for them to take what is theirs? So perhaps always be ready for that energy to flow and move through us, and for us to give whatever we need to at whatever moment, to always be in service. So that's what I get here, but I'm sure there's a lot more.
So this is a smooth continuation of verse 87, where we're not going to be dependent upon fake laws and fake judges and fake rulers, but we're going to be dependent upon the real ruler, which is Christ and the law of the Christ. And when that happens, then the angels will come and give us what is our due. And the prophets, which would be the law will make sure that we live, that justice is carried out. So if we're spiritually wealthy, we should be materially wealthy. There's a correspondence, as above, so below. The Christ will provide what you need when you need it, so that you can continue doing the work of Christ. And so once we're in this established position where we're now on the pathway of the Christ, and angels and the law is serving you, giving you your due, well, we should also make sure that we are continue to do the work of the Christ and give to others what the Christ would have us give to others. And then we should ask ourselves, sooner or later, this world was made manifest out of the spiritual realm. So this world it belongs to the Father above. It belongs to heaven, and heaven may bring this world to an end. And our world, our personal world, might come to an end. Our personal persona could come to an end. And so we should be thinking about the end result and do good while we have the opportunity to do good, because that opportunity might not always be there.
Yeah, well said. And I would say it's not even a might. It just is. The only constant in this experience is change. So given enough time, all will change, all will shift. So to practice that sacred art of non-attachment in all ways is the only way that we can stay in that eternal flow. And as was mentioned in that previous verse, where that which animates doesn't destroy us, if we're not aligned with that continuous knowing of change being the only constant. So yeah, well said. Thank you for that. So verse 89 says, Yeshua said, "Why do you wash the outside of the cup? Do you not understand that the one who made the outside also made the inside?" So we've talked about this, and Darth explains it beautifully, of only focusing on the effects, only focusing on the external. And that's the way that society teaches us. And so we're always concerned with the effects. But why not look at the root cause? Why not realize that it's all coming from the metaphysical moving into the physical? So if we don't see ourselves as the projector of our reality, we are manifesting whatever it is that we're experiencing continuously. If we're always focusing on washing the outside of the cup, but not seeing what's within it, what is the state of my internal reality, then I will get nowhere. So he's just rephrasing it to say, do you not understand that the one who made the outside, where the material comes from, also made the inside? And that's where our work is done.
Yeah, there are those that have a form of godly devotion, so they appear they appear to be spiritual, but they're actually just religious. And on the inside, they're dead. And on the inside, they don't actually have any relationship with the real Christ. But they look good, but they're useless. Christ can't do any work with them because they're just concerned with the way things look and not the way things actually are.
Yep, exactly. Virtue signalers, just doing it for appearance. So verse 90 says, Yeshua said, "Come to me, my yoke is good, my command is gentle, and you will find repose within you." So we'll find relief. So he's saying that, if we wear the yoke of Christ, then the command is gentle because it's your highest guidance. It's the divine layer that guides all of creation towards a more magnificent and beautiful space. So the command is there, but the command is gentle because it's a benevolent, unconditional, loving command. So when we surrender to that, and when we put on the yoke of Christ, then we will find relief. We will find that peace within ourselves.
Yeah, it's actually easier to live by spirit than it is to live by the flesh, because when you live by the flesh and you're not following the directions of the Father, the hidden Father, you end up fighting against yourself. So you're trying to physically get in one direction, but spiritually you're ruining your own work. But when you're moving spiritually in the same direction that you're moving physically, then things get really easy. And that's one of the ways to know that you're actually following the way of the Christ, because there's peace and unity within your own life. But if you're really having a hard time of it, and you're really struggling and things just don't seem to be going right, well, then you're probably you might be doing it wrong. Not that I'm not saying that just because you're going through tribulation that you're not following the Christian way, but maybe there's some aspect of following the way of the Christ that you've yet to master, or maybe there's some spiritual maturity that you have to go through, but you'll know that you've arrived at spiritual maturity because all of a sudden the Christ kind of smooths out the way for you, and your roads get really smooth, and then you have that confidence that, yes, I am working in unity with the Christ.
Beautifully said. So verse 91, they said to him, "Tell us who you are so that we may believe in you." He answered them, "You search the face of heaven and earth, but you do not recognize the one who is in your presence, and you do not know how to experience the present moment." I like that. So as the disciples often demonstrate, they are seeking some external validation, which he's already admonished them several times in this text, but of course they don't learn right away, which is helpful, so we can learn through contrast. So he said, "Tell us who you are so that we may believe in you." So give us proof, give us evidence, tell us explicitly. And so he answered, "You search the face of heaven and earth, but you do not recognize the one who is in your presence." So you're consistently seeking that external validation, as I mentioned, but you don't recognize the one who is in your presence, and you do not know how to experience the present moment. So if our focus is always on the past or the future or some false construct idea that the ego has manifested and is pointing us towards, we're not in the present moment, and we can't truly be embodied with the Christ if we're not here and now. Here and now is all that there is. Everything else is a false construct. So that he's just gently bringing them back into the here and now, and once again saying it in a different way of how to illustrate to them of like, do you not know, I am you, you are me, and we are here in this now experience from all of these different vantage points. And so, yeah, that's what I see in this one.
Yeah, that's really dead on. That's perfect. So there's a couple of terms here. It refers to the face. So in occult literature, a reference to the face could be like someone might have a bright face. So they have a bright spirit. So the face could be referencing the spirit. But in this context, it means the shallow aspect of something. So they're searching the face, but they're only doing so in a shallow manner. And then heaven and earth is a reference to the upper and the lower. So they're not searching deep. So he could have said you have to search the bowels, right? So the bowels are deep in the body, right? Contrary to the face, which is right up front and right there. And then heaven and earth means that's the lower and higher part of teachings. So because they're not looking for the deeper meaning in the words, they're not able to recognize the truth. And then, of course, God is always in the present, which is why the present is a present, because the divine is in it. And this is why mainstream Christian churches, they teach that Jesus is in the past or he'll be in the future, but they never teach that he's here now in the present. And that's one of the main ways that you can discern whether a spiritual tradition is true or false is, are they teaching that the divine is in the present? So that, because that's where we are. We're not in the past and we're not in the future. We're right here now. So if you want to have contact with the divine, you both got to be in the same location, which would be the present.
Yeah, beautifully said. And we'll keep going, but just wanted to mention, if anyone on the call has any questions or things they want to chime in with, you're always welcome to do so. I just wanted to mention that. So moving on to 92, Yeshua said, "Seek and you shall find. Yet those things you asked me about before and which I did not tell you, I am willing to reveal now, but you no longer ask." So seek and you shall find, yet those things you asked me about before and which I did not tell you, I am willing to reveal now, but you no longer ask. I'm going to pass this one over to you, Darth. What do you see in this one?
Okay, so what we're seeking is the truth, and what we find are the keys. So we're actually already in possession of the truth, and the truth is located in our hearts, which is where the Christ is, in our heart. But in order to access that, you need the keys to unlock it. So we're seeking the truth, but we find the keys. And then he says, "Yet those things you asked me about before, and which I did not tell you." So they had not progressed in spiritual maturity to the point of being able to understand. So he didn't tell them because there'd be no way for them to accept it. But now he's willing to reveal to them, and he's willing to show them how to use the keys, and he's willing to open up the mysteries of heavens. But now they're not asking it because they've just accepted the traditions of men. And this is something that happens in the scriptures. So in the Mosaic law, the people were seeking, and so they got the Mosaic law, which was just a pointer toward what was actually in heaven. See, the tabernacle that they had in the wilderness was not actually the kingdom of heaven, and the temple that Solomon built is not actually really the temple, right? The temple is a spiritual concept. And so the people at that time, they served the physical tabernacle and they served the physical temple, and they accepted that. And they were striving after that spiritual thing. And then when Christ actually shows up, well, they just rejected him and they preferred just to serve the temple. So this was not just something that he was saying about his disciples, but it was something that he was saying about the entire, about the situation of the Jews. that they were striving for something before, but it wasn't time yet. And then now that it's time, now they're not accepting it. They just want to stick with the temple because it's big and it's physical and it's made of gold and it's impressive and it flatters their ego. And there's this big established thing of priests and Sadducees and Pharisees and the scriptures, and they're the chosen ones. And there's the Christ that all the scriptures have been pointing to, and that all of their forefathers are striving for. Now he shows up, and now they don't want it. So it's kind of a rebuke toward the Jews of that time.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So verse 93, do not give sacred things to dogs, for they may treat them as dung. Do not throw pearls to swine, for they may treat them as rubbish. So this is very similar to what's written in Matthew and perhaps other Gospels in the canonical Bible. Don't cast your pearls before swine, for they may trample them underfoot. He's just saying that very explicitly. So we have to recognize that when we are operating from the Christ and we're learning these sacred ways, then what we speak is very precious, and it's not to discourage us from speaking and sharing, but know your audience, know whom you're speaking to. And if someone's not ready to receive that layer of the Christ, of the Christic message, then don't waste your energy, and because they're just going to treat them like shit. You know, the dogs are going to treat them as dung. The swine may treat them as rubbish. So don't cast your pearls. Don't give sacred things to dogs. And it's even though our desire might be to spread and to share this feeling that we have from stepping onto this path, and we're eager to do that. It's counterproductive to cast them in spaces that it's not welcome. It's not going to help them come to realize it any faster if they're not in a space of ready to receive. Now, this can change, of course. People can shift and their hearts can open and they might be ready to receive in a different moment. But it's not for us to force and make happen on any certain timeline or any certain way. So it's just, just a simple way of illustrating that. Don't waste your energy trying to do that, because it's just gonna cause them to dig in further. Perhaps it's gonna cause more discourse in your relationship, and and it'll just be energetically draining for all involved. So yeah, that's what I get here.
93 really flows with 92. So Yeshua says, seek the truth and you're going to find the keys. And yet these people that were looking for the truth before, now I've showed up because I am the truth, and now they're not interested. So don't give these sacred things that I'm teaching to you, these dogs. And that's what he's calling the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the false Jews. These people are dogs. Don't give them the things that I'm teaching you, because they're just going to throw it away. They won't appreciate it because they're not looking for me anymore. They're happy with their temple. And don't throw pearls to swine. And the swine would be false followers of Christ, because otherwise they're going to grind it up into little pieces, and they're going to take my teachings, which are supposed to be one whole thing, and they're going to separate it amongst themselves, and they're going to treat it like garbage.
Exactly. All right, 94, Yeshua said, whoever seeks will find, whoever knocks from inside, it will open to them. So this is reminiscent of Matthew 7:7, seek and you shall find, knock and the door will be open. But it takes it a step further and saying, whoever knocks from inside, it will open to them. Really stressing that point that this is an internal process. It's not some external door that you're trying to knock on. It is going within and being in that state of openness, receiving the surrender the seeking so that we can find. We're asking so that we can receive. And we must knock from the inside so that it will open to us the pathway for the divine to flow into us, for us to receive it. It's all internal. So yeah, that's what I get here.
Yeah, they took it from us because knock from the inside, that's supposed to be everywhere Jesus talks about knocking. It's supposed to say from the inside because Christ is in the heart. And so everywhere that it's not there, it's because they took it from us. Why? Because they don't want us searching our heart for Christ because we'll find Christ. They want us looking for Christ in the churches. They want us looking for the knowledge, true knowledge. They want us looking for that in the universities and the colleges and power, because all power is Christ and Christ is within, which means we have access to all power. They want us looking for that in the courthouses and in the Congresses and the Senates and the presidencies and the seats of the kings. But that's not where we should be looking. We should be looking within, because that's where we can find Christ and the power of Christ and the wisdom of Christ and the justice of Christ. Not on the outside. We're bigger on the inside. And so from the inside, that's the key right there. And they tried to take it from us, but here it is. They couldn't stop it. This is a gift from Christ.
Yes, beautifully said. Absolutely. So 95 says, Yeshua said, if you have money, do not lend it with interest, but give it to the one who will never pay you back. So if you have money, do not lend it with interest, but give it to the one who will never pay you back. So first, it's just describing how everything within this maritime admiralty law banking corrupt system is completely going against the divine law and goodness by lending with interest. But then it adds on to it, but give it to the one who will never pay you back. So perhaps give freely without attachment. This isn't something to always be, we're not debtors, we're creditors. And when we recognize the abundance of creation, if we are experiencing abundance in some form or some resource, then we are just a conduit for the divine to flow through to provide abundance to all involved. So we're not giving with strings attached. We're not giving with the expectation that it will even be returned. It's always paying it forward, always giving altruistically and without attachment to however that looks. So yeah, that's what I see in this one.
So someone who never pays it back, it's because they never let go of it, right? So in 93, he was saying, don't give it to the dogs and don't give it to the swine. So don't give it to those that have not even gone searching for the Christ, and don't give it to false Christians. But we do want to give it to someone that will accept it and they'll never let go of it again. So when we meet a fellow Christ, a fellow divine person, and we could just see that they're searching, then by all means tell them to search within. By all means give them the keys, the secret meanings to the teachings of Christ, because then we're confident that they'll never let go of it.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you. So 96, Yeshua said, the kingdom of the Father is like the dough in which a woman has hidden some yeast. It becomes transformed into good bread. Those who have ears, let them hear. So he's used this, the parable of the yeast and the dough before. And essentially yeast is you only need a tiny amount of it. It's a very small amount to cause the leavening process, that rising process. So that's why he's saying the kingdom of the Father is like the dough in which a woman has hidden some yeast. The yeast is there, and it doesn't take much for that process to begin expanding and for the dough to transform itself, to manifest as not only the kingdom of heaven within, but externally manifest and us to step into it. So it becomes transformed into good bread when we follow this Christic path and we activate the yeast through this internal process. We can look at human physiology with the chrism oil rising, the Christ within, but also just spreading the good news, doing good works, acting as that activation, that catalyst for the Christ to spring onto the earth and to manifest heaven on earth.
So the kingdom of the Father is like a woman, and the woman is the Holy Spirit. She's the force of love. She's the spiritual, feminine motive force. And she took a little leaven, that's the teachings of Christ, the essence of Christ, and she concealed it in some dough. And the dough is the scriptures. And she transformed the scriptures into good bread, which is delicious to eat and to look at and to smell and very pleasing to the senses. And so because the teachings of the Christ are concealed in this pleasing material, then it gets distributed all over the world. And everyone is enjoying this very pleasing book. The Bible it's actually very good literature from an artistic viewpoint. It's some of the best stuff out there. There's beautiful poetry and history and passion and excitement. The Bible is a good read, but that's not why we read it. We read it because we're trying to find the Christ, and hidden in the scriptures is the Christ. And the scriptures or the Christ was put in the scriptures by the Holy Spirit, by that woman. And so for those of us that have spiritual ears, that's what we're listening for. We're listening for the keys to the Christ. But most people don't read the Bible for that. They're just having a good time or participating in the tradition or the appearance of a religion. And they're not looking for the keys to the Christ within their heart.
Absolutely. Yep. So 97, Yeshua said, the kingdom of the Father is like the woman who carried a jar of flour. After she walked a long way, the handle of the jar broke, and the flour began to spill behind her along the road. Heedless, she noticed nothing. When she arrived, she set down the jar and found it empty. So if we're taking that same reference that Darth mentioned about the woman being the Holy Spirit, the kingdom of the Father is like the woman who carried a jar of flour, and then the jar breaks. After she walked a long way, the handle of the jar broke, and the flour began to spill behind her along the road. Heedless, she noticed nothing. When she arrived, she set down the jar and found it empty. So if she is the Holy Spirit, then the flour trail that she left would lead us back to that space, back to realization. Is that the pathway we're supposed to discover? Because heedless, she noticed nothing. When she arrived, she set down the jar and found it empty. Well, I don't know. There could be more to this. I'm sure there is. So I will just pass this one over to you, Darth.
No, that there's a dual meaning. There's a dual meaning. So one is that because it doesn't say whether it was intentional or not, right? It doesn't say whether she broke it on purpose or if it just happened, if it was an accident. So that means that both interpretations are correct. So this is literally what we've done is originally the Christian congregation was full of this spiritual meaning, and then the false Christians kind of infiltrated into the congregation, and they started spilling the truth out until we finally get all the way to today's date, and there's a bunch of Christian looking churches around, but they're dead stone walls, right? And so what do? We start following the path backwards in time till we find the actual meaning of the Christ's teachings, right? So what you said is accurate. However, the Essenes do this all the time. So in the previous verse, the woman was the Holy Spirit, but in this verse, she can also be the false Christian church. So the false Christian church walks a long way, and the long way that she's walking, it's time, and she breaks the handle, but this time it really is an accident because she's just imitating what the Jews did with the Mosaic Law, right? So originally the Mosaic Law was full of power and full of meaning, right? Like when you read the beginning of the Mosaic Law, Moses was able to do all these miracles, right? And Joshua was able to do all these miracles, but then the miracles start to peter off. I mean, there were some miracles in the time of King David, but by the time you get to Christ, the Mosaic Law was not able to produce any more miracles because it was now empty, right? And so the Christian congregation did the exact same thing, and they didn't notice because this is what their predecessors did, right? And so she gets down to today's date, and she puts down the jar, and now she's like, what happened? There's no power in it. And now people are fleeing the empty doctrines of the Catholic Church, right? So it has the dual meaning where one, it was a trail left intentionally by the Holy Spirit, but also the second meaning is that it was the empty-headed false Christians that wasted the teachings of Christ. But either way, we go back to find the true Christ as it was originally taught in the past before it was altered.
Right. Either way, we follow the trail that's been laid down, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for that. And then verse 98, Yeshua said, "The kingdom of the Father is like the man who wanted to kill a man of power. First, he unsheathed his sword at home and thrust it into the wall to test his strength. Then he was able to kill the man of power." So the kingdom of the Father is like the man who wanted to kill a man of power. First, he unsheathed his sword at home and thrust it into the wall to test his strength. Then he was able to kill the man of power. So this, at least I see this as saying we have to, so our home is going within, we have to be within ourselves to practice these spiritual teachings that is embodying the Christic way. If we're not doing it wholly, completely within ourselves, then we have no chance of doing it externally to wage war with it or anything in that capacity. So first he unsheathed his sword at home and thrust it into the wall to test his strength. So that's we've got to practice first, essentially. Yeah, but I'm sure there might be more here. So I'll pass it over to you.
So Yeshua says that the kingdom of the Father is like me, or Christ is the man, okay? And he wants to kill a man of power. That's Caesar, okay? Christ wanted to end the Roman Empire because remember, the Romans had jurisdiction over Israel at that time. And the Roman soldiers were raping their women and killing their men, and their taxation was driving the people into poverty. And so, and Christ is a warrior. He wants to bring his kingdom here to earth. And so it isn't just Caesar, it's also the devil, right? So we, as Christ, we want to kill evil. We want to drive the evil out of our lives and out of our world and out of the world of the people that we care about. So first, he draws his sword and he thrusts it into the wall at home. So first he's going to clean out his own world. He's going to clean out his own people's tradition to refine his power, to make himself stronger, right, as a form of training and discipline. And then he'll be able to kill the man of power, which is Caesar or Satan, right? So first, we need to spread this teaching to Christians everywhere. And we need to consolidate our power within the nations of Christianity. And then we have to make Christianity strong again. And then we can go out and erase evil from everywhere else in this world. Because we're soldiers fighting against the devil, fighting against the system of systems. But first we have to reclaim our own personal power in Christ. Because as long as the Christians are fake, they'll have no power. So we have to start making real Christians. This is a marching order.
Yeah, thank you for that. That makes total sense. All right, so verse 99, and I think this is going to be our last one for today. I do have a hard stop. So verse 99, his disciples said to him, "Your brothers and your mothers are waiting outside." He replied, "Those who do my Father's will are my brothers and my mother. It is they who will enter the kingdom of God." So he's delineating between our earthly relatives, those whom are born within our family physically, and our spiritual brothers and sisters and mother and father, and those who do my Father's will, it is they who will enter the kingdom of God. So he's just saying, not that we cast out our physical family, but that's not the end all be all to distinguish. It's those who truly do our Father's will, follow this Christic way, follow the divine influence. So yeah, that's what I see here.
So this is a continuation of the verse before. I keep saying that. This is a continuation of the verse before. That's how you know this is a divinely inspired document, because it's not babbling. It's one cohesive, intelligent statement from the very first verse to the very last verse. It is one intelligent statement. If it wasn't divine, it wouldn't make sense. And the verses would be divided, but they're not. So in verse 98, he's saying the objective. The objective is to kill the devil. The objective is to end the Roman Empire, right? Kill Caesar. That's the objective. And now his disciples are saying, your brothers and your mother are waiting outside. So outside is outside the heart. See, there's a door in your heart. And if you go into it, you find the Christ. And then the Christ can come back out with you and take control of your persona, right? So the mother would be like the Mosaic law, and the brothers would be other people that are trying to apply, but they're not really Christian, right? And they're outside the heart. And he says, those that do my Father's will, so those that follow the Spirit of the Christ and the Spirit of God, they are my brothers and they are my mother, right? So when we say that we're doing battle against evil, who is it that are actually Christians? It's people that are doing good, right? So they might not actually belong to a church. They might not even identify themselves as Christians. They might identify themselves as Muslims. They might identify themselves as a Jew, right? They might identify themselves as a witch, right? And they might not know anything about Christ or Christianity, but have they gone into the heart? Are they actually really a good person? See, then that's our brother, that's our mother, that's our sister, that's our family. Because they've gone in the door and now they entered into the kingdom of God. And that's who's going to be our fellow soldier in our battle against evil.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, cool. Well, we're going to stop here today. So I appreciate everyone for hopping on. And that should put us at a good spot. There's only 114 verses in here. We just stopped at 99. So I think we can get through 15 verses next time. We'll see. Don't want to rush anything, but most likely the next episode will be our last one for the Gospel of Thomas. And then we'll see what else is divinely inspired for us to read through and look through. So thanks, Darth, for hopping on, and thanks everybody else for listening. Darth, did you have any closing comments or things you wanted to add before we end up today?
I've thoroughly enjoyed our our conversation. This was like the enthusiastic part of the Gospel of Thomas, where we're going to hit the road and start implementing the teachings of Christ, because the teachings of Christ are not without point. There's an objective to all of this, which is to manifest goodness into the world. What's the point of knowing something if you're not doing something, right? So, yeah, no, I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much for being here, and agreed completely. You know, let these sayings, these teachings, this discussion, all of it be an inspiration in your life to put that into action. We can learn all day long, but if we're not embodying it, if we're not acting on it, then it really means nothing. So I know it certainly encourages me, helps me to stay even and centered, and I really do enjoy these discussions quite a lot. So yeah, we'll continue likely next week with the last one, but we'll see. And yeah, just thanks everyone for being here. Love you all, and we'll keep on keeping on. So see you next time.